They called her Worthless, a healer with no pack, a wolf with no fight left. On the coldest auction block in the frontier territories, Elara Voss stood chained beside livestock, starved down to bone and breath, while men bid on her like spoiled meat. She'd given up hope, until the most feared alpha in the northern mountains stepped into the marketplace and paid a fortune for a girl everyone said would be dead by winter. But Kyle Draven didn't buy her out of mercy. He bought her because he needed something no warrior could give him, and that need would crack his empire wide open. If you want to see how a broken healer becomes the one thing a brutal kingdom fears most, stick around till the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. Let's go. The wind off the northern range cut through the marketplace like a dull knife. Slow, cold, mean. It didn't care who it touched. The merchants had stopped bothering to pull their coats tighter. The crowd had stopped bothering to look warm. This was Iron Ridge, 3 days' hard ride from anything resembling civilization. And if you came here, you came because you had nowhere softer to be. Elara Voss knelt in the dirt beside a wagon that smelled like rot and iron. Her wrists were shackled. Her dress, what was left of it, hung off her frame like something pulled from a trash fire. She didn't remember the last time she'd eaten. 2 days? 3? Time had a way of blurring when all you did was survive from one breath to the next. Around her, the auction continued. Lot 17, strong back, good teeth, field trained. A young man was shoved forward onto the platform. He stood tall, shoulders squared, trying to look like something worth buying. Someone in the crowd shouted a number. The auctioneer grinned, already counting his commission. Elara kept her head down. She'd learned not to look. Looking made it worse. Looking meant you saw the faces of the people deciding your worth, and there was nothing in those faces but calculation. Cold math. How much work could you do before you dropped? How long before the investment went bad? Lot 18, the auctioneer's voice dropped. Bored now. Female. Healer, supposedly. Came in with the Greythorn pack before they got wiped out. Not much left on her. A hand grabbed her arm and yanked her to her feet. The world tilted, went gray at the edges. She steadied herself against the post, barely. Her legs felt like they belonged to someone else. The crowd didn't even pretend to be interested. She gonna make it through the week? Someone called out. Not my problem once you pay, the auctioneer shot back. Laughter rippled through the cold air. Elara felt it like a slap she was too tired to dodge. She'd heard worse. Heard it every day since the Greythorn pack fell. Since the night the raiders came and burned everything she'd ever known to the ground. Since she'd crawled out of the rubble alone, covered in ash and blood that wasn't hers, and realized that being a healer meant nothing when there was no one left to heal. 5 silver, a voice muttered from the back. Bored, lazy, like he was buying a sack of bad grain. The auctioneer squinted into the crowd. That's it? 5? Silence. Anyone else? No? Come on, she's got healer training. That's worth something, isn't it? She looks half dead, someone else said. Exactly, so she's cheap. Think of her as a project. More laughter. Elara closed her eyes. This was it. This was what her life had come to. Sold for the price of a decent meal to someone who'd work her till she dropped and then toss her body in a ditch somewhere. The auctioneer raised his hand. Going once, 100 gold. The marketplace went dead quiet. Elara's eyes snapped open. The crowd turned as one, necks craning, whispers hissing through the frozen air like steam off a forge. A figure stood at the edge of the square, tall and broad-shouldered, wrapped in a gray cloak that didn't move even when the wind tried to pull at it. His face was hard, all sharp lines and cold angles, like someone had carved him out of the mountains themselves and forgot to sand down the edges. Kyle Draven. Even Elara, half-starved and barely conscious, knew that name. Everyone in the Northern Territories knew that name. The Alpha of the Northern Ranges, the Wolf Lord of the Iron Summit Pack, the man who'd unified a dozen warring clans under one brutal, unbreakable law, strength above all. Mercy was weakness, compassion was death. If you couldn't fight, you didn't eat. If you couldn't contribute, you didn't stay. And he was looking right at her. The auctioneer stammered, did you say 100 gold? Kyle's voice was low, flat, and sharp enough to cut. You heard me? Sir, with all respect, she's not worth. I didn't ask for your opinion. The auctioneer's mouth snapped shut. His face went red, then pale. He fumbled with his ledger, hands shaking. Kyle stepped forward. The crowd parted like he carried a plague. He moved with the kind of confidence that came from never having to prove anything twice. His eyes, pale gray, like winter fog, stayed locked on Elara. She couldn't look away, couldn't breathe. There was something in that gaze that made her feel like she was being weighed and measured down to the bone. Not with cruelty, not with kindness either, just assessment. Unchain her, Kael said. The auctioneer fumbled with his keys, nearly dropped them. Yes, my lord. Right away, of course. The shackles fell. Elara's wrists were raw underneath, red and blistered from 3 days of rubbing against iron. She didn't move. Didn't know if she could. Her legs felt like they might give out if she tried. Kael didn't reach for her, didn't offer a hand. He just looked at her like he was deciding whether she was worth the trouble of keeping upright. Can you walk? He asked. Elara swallowed. Her throat was dry as sand. I can try. That's not what I asked. She met his eyes. Something in her, something she thought had died back in the ruins of the Greythorn Pack, buried under smoke and screaming, stirred, angry, stubborn, a small, flickering ember that refused to go out. Yes, she said. Her voice came out stronger than she expected. I can walk. Kyle's expression didn't change. He turned and started toward the edge of the square, his cloak sweeping behind him like a shadow. Follow me. Elara glanced at the auctioneer, at the crowd, at the wagon she'd been chained to for 3 days. No one moved to stop her. No one cared. She was sold goods now, someone else's problem. She took a step. Her legs nearly buckled. She caught herself, breathed through the pain, and took another, and another. Kael didn't look back. Behind her, the crowd was already moving on to the next lot, the next body, the next transaction. Elara followed the Wolf Lord into the cold. The ride north was worse than the auction. Kael had horses, massive, dark-coated beasts that looked like they could run through a stone wall and not notice. Elara was given one. She nearly fell off twice in the first hour. No one helped her. The group riding with Kael, 6 wolves, all warriors, all scarred and silent, watched her struggle with the kind of detached interest you'd give a bug trying to crawl out of a cup. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with a face like a fist and scars that ran from his temple to his jaw, muttered something to his companion. They both laughed, low and mean. Elara gripped the reins tighter and said nothing. She'd learned that lesson early. Talking back got you hit. Complaining got you left behind. The best thing you could do was keep your mouth shut and your head down. They rode for 2 days. The terrain shifted as they climbed. Flat plains gave way to rolling hills, then jagged rock and snow-dusted pine. The air got thinner. The cold got meaner. Elara's fingers went numb inside her torn gloves. She tucked them under her arms when she thought no one was looking, trying to keep the blood moving. Kael rode at the front, alone. He didn't speak, didn't stop except to water the horses. Ate in silence, standing, eyes always scanning the horizon like he expected an attack at any moment. On the second night, they made camp in a shallow ravine that cut the wind. A fire was built, small, controlled, just enough to take the edge off the cold. Elara sat as close to it as she dared, shivering so hard her teeth clicked together. One of the warriors, a lean, sharp-eyed woman with braided black hair and a scar that split her upper lip, tossed her a piece of dried meat. Eat, the woman said. Not kind, just practical. The way you'd feed a horse, you didn't want to die on the road. Elara caught the meat and ate. It was tough, salty, hard to chew. She didn't care. It was food. Across the fire, the broad-shouldered man, his name was Garen, she'd learned from listening to the others, was sharpening a knife. He glanced at her, then at Kael, who sat outside the firelight, staring into the dark like it might talk back. Why'd you buy her? Garen asked. His voice was rough, like gravel in a boot. Kael didn't look up. Not your concern. 100 gold for a healer we don't need, that's my concern. Then take it up with Varrock when we get back. Garen's jaw tightened. He went back to sharpening his knife, dragging the blade across the stone with long, deliberate strokes that set Elara's teeth on edge. She pulled her knees to her chest and stared into the fire. She didn't understand any of this. Didn't understand why Kael had bought her. Didn't understand why he'd paid so much. 100 gold could buy weapons, horses, supplies. It could buy 10 workers stronger and healthier than her. Why waste it on a broken healer from a dead pack? The question gnawed at her, but she didn't ask. Asking meant drawing attention, and attention was the last thing she wanted. The lean woman, Rhea, one of the others had called her, was watching Elara from across the fire. Not hostile, just curious. "You really a healer?" Rhea asked. Elara nodded. "Greythorn pack?" Another nod. "Heard about that. Raiders hit you hard." Elara's hands tightened around her knees. She didn't want to talk about it. Didn't want to remember the screaming, the fire, the way the raiders had moved through the camp like they were harvesting wheat. Fast, efficient, no mercy. "Yeah," she said quietly. "They did." Rhea didn't push, she just nodded and went back to cleaning her blade. Garen wasn't as tactful. "So what happened? You hide while everyone else fought?" Elara's head snapped up. "I was trying to save the ones who were still alive." "How'd that work out?" "Garen." Kael's voice cut through the firelight like a whip crack. He still wasn't looking at them, but the warning was clear. Garen muttered something under his breath and went back to his knife. Elara didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the fire, heard the screaming, felt the weight of the bodies she couldn't save. They reached Iron Summit on the third day. Elara had heard stories about the fortress. Everyone had. It was carved into the side of a mountain, built from black stone and iron, ringed by walls so high you couldn't see the top unless you craned your neck back till it hurt. It looked less like a home and more like a scar. A wound in the earth that refused to heal. The gates were massive, thick wood reinforced with iron bands, flanked by watchtowers manned by archers who tracked their approach with cold, professional precision. As they got closer, Elara could hear the sounds from inside. Hammering, shouting, the clash of steel on steel. The gates opened as they approached. Inside, the courtyard was a hive of movement. Warriors sparring in the training rings, blacksmiths hammering at forges that glowed orange in the dim light, supply carts being unloaded by workers who moved like they'd done this 1,000 times and would do it 1,000 more. Everyone moved with purpose. No one wasted a step. No one smiled. Kael dismounted and handed his reins to a stable hand without a word. He started toward the main hall, a massive stone building that dominated the center of the fortress. "Garan," he said over his shoulder. "Take her to the east wing, 3rd floor. Find her a room." Garen looked like he'd just been asked to shovel horse shit with his bare hands. "My lord, do it!" Kael disappeared inside the hall without waiting for a response. Garen turned to Elara, his expression somewhere between annoyance and disgust. "Get off the horse." Elara slid down. Her legs nearly gave out. She caught herself on the saddle, held on till the world stopped spinning. Garen didn't wait. He started walking, shouldering through the crowd like they weren't there. Elara followed, stumbling over uneven cobblestones, trying not to lose sight of him in the chaos. The east wing was quieter, colder. The hallways were narrow, lit by torches that cast long shadows on the stone walls. Garen climbed 2 flights of stairs without slowing down. Elara's lungs burned by the time they reached the 3rd floor. He stopped in front of a door near the end of the hall and shoved it open. The room was small, a bed, a chair, a table, a single narrow window that looked out over the training yard. No lock on the door, no rug on the floor, just cold stone and colder air. Garen stepped aside. "You're here. Don't cause trouble." "What am I supposed to—" The door slammed shut. Elara stood there, staring at the wood. Her hands were still shaking. She didn't know if it was from the cold, or the fear, or the exhaustion, or all 3 at once. She walked to the bed and sat down. The mattress was thin, lumpy, but it was softer than anything she'd slept on in months. She pulled her knees up, wrapped her arms around them, and waited. For what? She didn't know. 3 days passed. No one came. Elara stayed in the room. There was no lock, but she didn't leave. Didn't know where she'd go. Didn't know if she was allowed. The fortress was a maze of stone and iron, and she was a stranger in it, an outsider, the girl the Alpha bought for reasons no one understood. Food appeared outside her door twice a day: bread, thin soup, water. Someone left it and walked away without knocking. She ate it in silence, sitting on the floor with her back against the bed. On the fourth day, the door opened. A woman stepped inside. Older, maybe 50, with silver streaks in her dark hair and a face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile decades ago. She wore a plain gray dress and an apron stained with grease and flour. "I'm Mira," the woman said. Her voice was flat, businesslike. "You're coming with me." Elara stood slowly. "Where?" "Kitchens. You'll work." "I'm a healer." Mira's expression didn't change. "Not here, you're not." "But Listen." Mira stepped closer. Her eyes were hard, but not cruel, just tired. "I don't know why the Alpha bought you, and I don't care. What I know is this: everyone in this fortress works, no exceptions. You want to eat? You work. You want a roof? You work. You think you're special because you can stitch up a cut? You're not. So you can come with me to the kitchens, or you can sit in this room and starve. Your choice." Elara's jaw tightened. She wanted to argue. Wanted to say that she'd spent 5 years training, that she'd saved lives, that she was worth more than chopping vegetables. But she'd also spent the last 3 months starving, and she knew what happened to people who thought they were too good to work. "Fine," she said. "I'll come." Mira nodded. Smart girl. The kitchens were chaos. 20 people moving at once, cutting, stirring, hauling, shouting. The heat from the ovens turned the air thick and wet, made it hard to breathe. The smell of roasting meat and onions and something burnt hung in the air like smoke. Elara was given a knife and a pile of vegetables the size of a small child and told to keep up. She did. For 6 hours straight she chopped. Carrots, potatoes, onions that made her eyes stream. Her hands blistered. Her back screamed. The knife slipped once and nicked her thumb. She wrapped it in a rag and kept going. Around her, the kitchen staff moved like a machine. No wasted motion, no conversation beyond what was necessary. "Move. Behind you. Watch the pot." Mira watched her from across the room, arms crossed, expression unreadable. When the dinner rush finally ended and the last of the dishes were hauled away, Mira walked over. "You'll do," she said. Elara wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. She was covered in sweat and vegetable scraps. "That's it?" "That's it." "I'm a healer," Elara said again, quieter this time. "I trained for years. I saved people. I don't care," Mira cut her off. "Neither does anyone else here. You're here because the Alpha bought you. You work because that's what you do now. If you've got a problem with it, take it up with him." Elara's jaw tightened. "Where is he?" "Gone. War council with the Eastern Pax. Won't be back for a week, maybe 2. Mira turned and walked away, already barking orders at someone else. Elara stood there, knife still in her hand, surrounded by the smell of onions and sweat and smoke. This was her life now. She went back to chopping. The days blurred together. Wake before dawn. Work in the kitchens till her hands bled. Eat scraps standing up. Sleep on the thin mattress with her boots still on in case she needed to run. No one talked to her. Not really. The kitchen staff gave orders and she followed them. That was the extent of it. She was a tool, a pair of hands. Nothing more. She learned the rhythms of the fortress. Morning drills in the courtyard. Warriors sparring with blunted weapons, moving through formations that looked like dances until you realized they were designed to kill. Afternoon patrols leaving through the gates. Evening meals where the hall filled with voices and laughter and the clash of cups, but the kitchen stayed quiet. She learned the hierarchy too. The warriors at the top, the craftsmen and merchants below them, the laborers at the bottom, and somewhere outside all of it, invisible and ignored, her. 2 weeks in, she saw her first casualty. A young warrior, 17, maybe 18, was carried into the courtyard on a stretcher, his leg torn open from knee to hip. The wound was deep, jagged, bleeding fast. Looked like something with claws had gotten hold of him and tried to rip him apart. Elara was crossing the yard with a basket of linens when they brought him in. She stopped. The healers, 2 of them, both men, both older, were already working on him. One was packing the wound with cloth, pressing down hard to slow the bleeding. The other was mixing something in a bowl, his hands moving fast but not steady. "Hold him down!" the first one barked at the warriors standing nearby. They grabbed the boy's shoulders. He screamed, back arching, eyes rolling back. Elara's hands tightened on the basket. She knew that scream, knew what it meant. The wound was infected. If they didn't clean it properly, if they didn't get the poison out, move. She turned. Garen was standing behind her, arms crossed, blocking her path. "I said move." "He's dying," Elara said. "Not your problem. I can help. You can go back to the kitchens where you belong." Elara looked at the boy. His face was pale, slick with sweat. His breathing was coming in short, desperate gasps. The healers were arguing now, one of them saying they needed to amputate, the other saying it was too late. Something in Elara's chest cracked open. "No," she said. Garen's eyes narrowed. "What did you just say?" "I said no." She dropped the basket and walked toward the boy. Garen grabbed her arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "You don't have permission." Elara twisted free and kept walking. She'd spent 2 weeks being invisible, being quiet, being nothing. Not today. The healers looked up as she approached. The older one, gray-haired, thin-lipped, with the look of a man who'd seen too much and cared too little, frowned. "Who are you?" "I'm a healer," Elara said. "Let me see him." "We've got it under control." "No, you don't. You're packing the wound without cleaning it first. The infection's already spreading. If you don't, get her out of here." The older healer stood, bristling. "I don't know who you think you are. Wait." The second healer, younger, maybe 30, held up a hand. He looked at Elara with something that might have been curiosity. "You trained?" "Greythorn Pack, 5 years under Elder Marin." The younger healer's eyebrows went up. "Marin? She was good. She was the best." He glanced at the boy, then back at her. The boy's breathing was getting worse. "Fine. Show me what you've got." The older healer made a disgusted sound. "Torn, this is—" "Let her try," Torn said. "We're losing him anyway." Elara knelt beside the stretcher. The boy's eyes were half closed, unfocused. His skin was burning up. She placed her hand on his chest, closed her eyes, and reached. The healing gift wasn't magic. It wasn't some mystical force that poured out of your hands and fixed everything. It was focus, instinct, the ability to feel what was wrong, really feel it, down in your bones, and know how to fix it. Elara had been born with it, had trained it for years under Elder Marin, learning to sense the flow of life in a body, to feel where it was blocked or broken. She'd thought she'd lost it when her pack fell, thought it had died with everyone else. But it was still there. She felt the infection spreading through his leg like fire through dry wood, hot and vicious. Felt the fever climbing, his body trying to fight and failing. Felt his heart struggling, beating too fast, working too hard. She opened her eyes. "I need clean water, needle and thread. And yarrow root if you have it. Now." Torin didn't argue. He moved, snapping orders at the warriors. The older healer crossed his arms. "This is a waste of time." Elara ignored him. She grabbed a cloth from the pile beside the stretcher and started cleaning the wound, working fast. The boy screamed again. She didn't stop, couldn't stop. If she stopped, he died. Torn came back with the supplies. Elara threaded the needle with hands that didn't shake, hadn't shaken since the first time she'd stitched a wound at 14 and started closing the worst of the tear. "Hold him steady," she said. The warriors pressed down. The boy thrashed. Elara kept stitching. When the wound was closed, she packed it with crushed yarrow root to draw out the infection, then wrapped it tight. By the time she finished, the boy's breathing had steadied. The color was starting to come back into his face. Torn stared at her. "How did you—" "I told you, I'm a healer." The older healer looked less impressed. "Varroc's not going to like this. You don't have clearance to—" "I don't care," Elara said. She stood, wiped her hands on her dress, already stained with blood. "He was dying. Now he's not. That's all that matters." She walked away before anyone could stop her. Behind her, Garen was still standing there, jaw tight, eyes hard. She didn't look back. Word spread fast. By the next morning, half the fortress knew. The girl the Alpha bought had defied orders, touched a warrior without permission, healed him when the official healers said it was hopeless. Elara waited for the punishment, for someone to drag her in front of whoever was in charge and tell her she'd overstepped. That healers had a hierarchy here, same as warriors, and she was at the bottom of it. It didn't come. Instead, 3 days later, a woman showed up at her door in the middle of the night. Younger than Elara, maybe 20, with dark circles under her eyes, and a baby in her arms. The baby was crying, weak, thin little sounds that barely carried. The woman's face was desperate. "Please," she said. "They told me you could help. She can't breathe right. She's been sick for 2 days, and the healers said there's nothing they can do. Please." Elara looked at the child, looked at the woman. Every instinct she had screamed at her to say no, to close the door and go back to being invisible. But she couldn't. "Come inside," she said. She saved the baby, cleared her airways, brought down the fever, mixed a tincture that would help her breathe. The woman cried when she left, grabbed Elara's hands and thanked her over and over. Elara closed the door and sat on the floor, shaking. 2 days later, an old man came. Then a girl with a broken arm that had set wrong. Then a warrior with a fever that wouldn't break. Elara helped them all. She worked in the kitchens during the day, healed in secret at night, kept her head down, kept moving, and no one stopped her. Not yet. Kael returned on the 23rd day. Elara was in the courtyard, hauling water from the well to the kitchens, when the gates opened and he rode in with his war party. He looked exactly the same, cold, sharp, untouchable. Like the 2 weeks away hadn't touched him at all. He dismounted, handed off his reins to a stable hand, started toward the main hall, and stopped. He turned slowly, and his eyes found hers across the courtyard. For a moment, neither of them moved. The world seemed to narrow down to just that, his gaze and hers, 30 feet of stone and air between them. Elara's heart was pounding. She didn't know why. Didn't know what he saw when he looked at her. Didn't know if he'd heard about the boy she'd saved, about the people who'd started coming to her door. Then Kael looked away and kept walking, disappearing into the hall. Elara stood there, water bucket in hand, heart still pounding for reasons she didn't understand. Something had shifted. She just didn't know what yet. That night, Elara couldn't sleep. She lay on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the fortress settling around her. Footsteps in the hall, distant voices, the clang of metal from the forges that never seemed to stop, even after dark. Kael was back. That changed things. She didn't know how yet, but she felt it in her gut, the same way she'd felt the infection in that boy's leg, the wrongness humming beneath the surface. She'd broken rules, saved people she wasn't supposed to touch. And in a place like this, where strength was law and mercy was weakness, that made her dangerous. Or stupid. Maybe both. She rolled onto her side and closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time she started to drift, she saw Kael's face in the courtyard. That look, like he'd been weighing her and found her wanting, or worse, found her interesting. She didn't know which scared her more. Morning came cold and gray. Elara dragged herself out of bed, pulled on the same stained dress she'd been wearing for weeks, and headed down to the kitchens. Her hands still ached from yesterday's work, blisters layered on top of blisters, but complaining wouldn't change anything. Mira was already there, barking orders at the early shift. She glanced at Elara when she walked in, gave her a curt nod, and pointed at a sack of potatoes the size of a grown man. "Peel those. All of them. Breakfast is in an hour." Elara grabbed a knife and got to work. The kitchen filled up fast, bodies moving, pots clanging, someone cursing over a burned pan. Elara kept her head down and her hands moving. Peel, toss, peel, toss. The rhythm was almost soothing, until the door slammed open. A man walked in, tall, broad, older than Kael by maybe 10 years, with iron gray hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone and left out in the weather to crack. He wore armor, dark, scarred leather, reinforced with steel plates, and moved like someone who expected the world to get out of his way. The kitchen went quiet. Mira straightened, wiped her hands on her apron. "Lord Varrock." Varrock. Elara's stomach tightened. She'd heard the name whispered in the halls. Kale's uncle, the man who'd helped build the Iron Summit Pack from the ground up. The enforcer of the old laws. The one who believed weakness was a disease that had to be cut out before it spread. Varrok's eyes swept the room, cold and assessing, and landed on Elara. "You," he said. Alara's hand froze mid-peel. "Me?" "Stand up." She stood slowly, knife still in her hand. Around her, the kitchen staff had gone stone still. Varrok walked toward her, boots heavy on the floor. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could see the scars on his face. Old ones, deep ones, the kind that told stories she didn't want to hear. "You're the healer," he said. Not a question. Yes, the one who saved the boy in the courtyard. I did what I could." Varrok's expression didn't change. "You defied protocol. Healers here follow rank. You're not ranked. You're not even registered." "He was dying." "That's not the point." "Then what is?" The words were out before she could stop them. She saw Mira's face go pale across the room. Varrok took a step closer. "The point," he said, his voice low and sharp, "is that in this pack we have rules. Rules that keep us strong, keep us alive. You think you can walk in here and ignore them because you've got a soft heart and a steady hand?" Alara's jaw tightened. "I think I can save lives. That's what healers do." "Not here." Varrok leaned in, and Elara could smell steel and smoke on him. "Here, you follow orders. You stay in your place. You don't touch warriors without clearance. You don't undermine the chain of command, and you sure as hell don't make the healers we already have look incompetent." I wasn't trying to. "I don't care what you were trying to do." Varrok straightened. "You're new, so I'll give you one warning. Step out of line again and you're gone. Understand?" Elara met his eyes. She should have looked down, should have nodded and kept her mouth shut. Instead, she said, "What happens when someone's dying and your healers can't save them? Do you just let them go because I'm not ranked high enough to help?" The kitchen was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. Varrok stared at her for a long, terrible moment. Then he smiled, cold, thin, humorless. "Yes," he said, "that's exactly what you do." He turned and walked out. The door slammed behind him. Elara stood there, knife still in her hand, heart hammering against her ribs. Mira crossed the room fast, grabbed her by the arm, and pulled her into the corner. "Are you out of your mind?" Mira hissed. "Do you know what he could do to you?" "I don't care." "Well, you should. Varrok doesn't make empty threats. If he says you're gone, you're gone. And out there—" Mira jerked her head toward the window, toward the mountains beyond the walls. "You won't last 3 days." Elara pulled her arm free. "Then maybe I shouldn't have been brought here in the first place." Mira's face softened, just a fraction. "Look, I don't know why the Alpha bought you, but you're here now, and if you want to stay alive, you need to learn how things work. Keep your head down, do your job. Don't give Varrok a reason to notice you again. Too late for that. Then pray he forgets." Mira walked away, already shouting at someone about the bread burning. Elara went back to the potatoes. Her hands were shaking. 3 days passed without incident. Elara worked, kept quiet, stayed out of sight. But people still came. A woman with a toothache so bad she couldn't eat. A man with a hand infection from a badly cleaned wound. A child with a cough that sounded like rocks grinding together. They came at night, slipping through the hallways like shadows, knocking softly on her door. Desperate, afraid. Elara helped them all. She knew it was dangerous, knew Varrok had made himself clear. But what was she supposed to do? Turn them away? Let them suffer because some old wolf thought compassion was weakness? She couldn't, wouldn't. On the 4th night there was a knock, louder than usual. Elara opened the door and found Torin standing there, the younger healer from the courtyard. He looked uncomfortable. "Can I come in?" he asked. Elara stepped aside. Torin walked in, glanced around the bare room, and then looked at her. "You need to stop," he said. "Stop what?" "Helping people, words getting around. People are talking, saying you're better than the ranked healers. That you saved the Marek boy when we couldn't." "I did save him. I know, I was there. But that's not the point." Torin ran a hand through his hair. Look, I get it. You're good, really good. But this place, it doesn't work the way you think it does. There's a hierarchy. You can't just skip it. Why not? If I can help, because Varrock will crush you. Torin's voice dropped. He doesn't care if you're good. He cares about order, control. The second you start making people question the system, you're a threat. And threats get eliminated. Elara crossed her arms. So what am I supposed to do? Just sit here and do nothing? Yes. If you want to survive. That's not living. That's just existing. Torin sighed. You sound like someone who's never been exiled before. I had a pack. It got wiped out. I know what loss feels like. Then you should know better than to throw your life away here. He walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the frame. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to help. But if you keep this up, I can't protect you. No one can. He left. Elara sat on the bed, staring at the door, and felt the weight of the fortress pressing down on her like a physical thing. The next day, everything changed. Elara was in the kitchens, elbow deep in dishwater, when the alarm bells started ringing. Not the slow, steady toll that marked the changing of the guard. This was fast, urgent, chaotic. The kind of sound that meant something had gone wrong. The kitchen emptied in seconds. Everyone rushed to the windows, to the doors, trying to see what was happening. Elara dried her hands and followed. Outside, the courtyard was in chaos. Warriors scrambling, grabbing weapons, forming up into squads. Someone was shouting orders. Horses were being saddled. The gates were opening. And then she saw them. A group of riders coming in fast, half of them slumped in their saddles, covered in blood. They looked like they'd ridden through a war and barely made it out. At the front, holding himself upright through sheer stubbornness, was Kael. Elara's breath caught. He was hurt. She could see it in the way he moved, the way his jaw was clenched tight against the pain. His left arm hung limp at his side. His cloak was torn, soaked with blood that might have been his or someone else's. The riders pulled to a stop in the courtyard. Kael dismounted, barely. He stumbled, caught himself on the saddle. Varrock was there in seconds, grabbing his shoulder. What happened? Ambush, Kael said. His voice was rough, strained. East Ridge. They were waiting for us. How many? 40? Maybe more. We killed most of them, but he gestured at the riders behind him. We lost people. Varrock cursed, low and vicious. Get the wounded inside. Now! Warriors moved fast, pulling the injured off their horses, carrying them toward the main hall. Healers appeared, shouting for supplies, for space, for help. Elara stood frozen at the edge of the courtyard, watching. And then she saw him. One of the warriors being carried in, older, gray-haired, barely conscious. His chest was a mess of blood and torn leather, and even from here Elara could see the shallow, gasping breaths. Varrock. Wait. No, not Varrock, but someone who looked like him, same build, same scars. A brother? A cousin? The healers were already swarming him, but Elara could tell from their faces they didn't think he'd make it. She should have stayed back, should have kept out of it. Instead, she started walking. Garen stepped in front of her, blocking her path. Where do you think you're going? I can help? You're not ranked. You heard Varrock. Get out of my way. Something in her voice must have surprised him, because he hesitated. Just for a second. It was enough. Elara pushed past him and ran. The main hall had been turned into a field hospital. Wounded men and women laid out on tables, on the floor, on anything flat enough to hold a body. Blood everywhere. The smell of it thick in the air, metallic and wrong. The healers were overwhelmed. Too many wounded. Not enough hands. Elara found the gray-haired man on a table near the back. 2 healers were working on him. Torin and the older one, the one who'd wanted her thrown out. She pushed between them. What are you doing? The older healer snapped. Elara ignored him. She put her hands on the man's chest and closed her eyes. The damage was bad. Worse than bad. Punctured lung, internal bleeding, ribs broken in at least 3 places, and something else, something sharp and hot spreading through his blood. Poison. Her eyes snapped open. He's been poisoned. Torin looked up. What? The wound. It's poisoned. That's why he's not clotting right. I need you to get out of my way, the older healer said. He grabbed her arm. Let go of me. You're not authorized. He's dying. So let him die with dignity instead of... A hand clamped down on the older healer's shoulder and yanked him back. Cale stood there, blood-streaked, pale, swaying slightly on his feet. His eyes were hard. Let her work, he said. The older healer's mouth opened, closed. He stepped back. Cale looked at Elara. Save him. I'll try. Don't try. Do it. He turned and walked away, moving like every step cost him. Elara turned back to the dying man and got to work. It took 2 hours. 2 hours of cutting, stitching, draining the poison, packing the wounds, keeping his heart beating when it wanted to stop. Torin helped. The older healer didn't, but he didn't interfere either. By the time Elara finished, her hands were covered in blood up to the elbows, and she was shaking so hard she could barely stand. But the man was breathing, steady, deep. He'd live. Torin stared at her. How did you... I don't know, Elara said honestly. I just knew. She stumbled away from the table, looking for water, for air, for anything. Someone grabbed her arm. She turned. Varrock was standing there, and for the first time since she'd met him, his face wasn't hard. It was blank, unreadable. That's my brother, he said quietly. Elara blinked. You saved his life. I did what I could. Varrock looked at her for a long moment. Then he let go of her arm and walked away without another word. Elara stood there swaying, exhausted, and wondered if she'd just made things better or so much worse. She found out 3 days later. Varrock called a meeting in the main hall. Everyone was required to attend. Warriors, workers, healers, everyone. Elara stood at the back, trying to be invisible. Varrock stood at the front, arms crossed, face like iron. Some of you have heard, he said, his voice carrying across the hall, that we were ambushed, that we lost good people, that my brother nearly died. Silence. He didn't die, Varrock continued, because of a healer, an unranked healer who defied protocol to save his life. Elara's stomach dropped. Varrock's eyes found hers across the hall. Step forward. Every head in the room turned. Elara's legs felt like they were made of wet clay, but she walked forward anyway. The crowd parted. She stopped in front of Varrock. He looked at her, and for a moment she thought he was going to thank her. Instead, he said, "You broke the rules. Again, despite my warning. Your brother was dying. That's not an excuse. It's the only excuse that matters." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Varrock's jaw tightened. "You think you're special because you can heal? You think that gives you the right to do whatever you want?" "I think it gives me the responsibility to help when I can." Responsibility. Varrock's voice dripped with contempt. "You sound like a child. This pack survives because we follow the law, not because we feel sorry for the weak. Your brother isn't weak. He's a warrior, and he'd be dead if I'd followed your law." The hall went dead silent. Varrock stared at her, and then, slowly, he smiled. That same cold, humorless smile. "You're right," he said. Elara blinked. "What?" "You saved my brother, and for that, I owe you." He stepped closer. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to be tested, officially. If you pass, you get ranked. You can heal whoever you want within the system. If you fail," he paused, "you leave permanently." Elara's heart was pounding. What kind of test? Varrock's smile widened. The kind that proves whether you're strong enough to be here, or just another weak link we need to cut. He turned and addressed the hall. 3 days, she'll be tested in front of everyone, and we'll see what she's really made of. The hall erupted in whispers. Varrock walked past her without another glance. Elara stood there, frozen, and realized she'd just been backed into a corner with no way out. Elara stood there, frozen, and realized she'd just been backed into a corner with no way out. The hall emptied slowly, warriors filing out in tight groups, muttering to each other. Some of them looked at her with curiosity, others with something closer to pity. A few didn't look at all, like she was already gone. Torin caught her arm as she turned to leave. You need to prepare, he said quietly. For what? He didn't even tell me what the test is. That's the point. Varrock's tests aren't about knowledge. They're about breaking you, seeing if you fold under pressure. Elara pulled her arm free. I don't fold. Everyone folds eventually. Torin's face was grim. The question is whether you fold before or after you've proven yourself. He walked away before she could respond. Elara stood alone in the emptying hall, her heart still hammering, and tried to figure out how she'd gone from invisible kitchen worker to this, center stage, with a target on her back and 3 days to figure out how to survive. The first day, she tried to learn what she could. She asked Mira what the tests were usually like. Mira just shook her head and told her to pray for good weather. That didn't help. She asked one of the older kitchen staff, a man named Corbin who'd been at Iron Summit for 20 years. He looked at her like she'd asked him to explain death. Varrock's tests aren't the same twice, Corbin said. Seen him make a blacksmith forge a blade blindfolded. Seen him make a scout track a wolf through a blizzard with no gear. One time he made a warrior fight 3 men at once with a broken arm just to prove he could take the pain. What happened to them? The blacksmith passed, the scout died of exposure 2 days later, the warrior? Corbin shrugged. He's still here, missing an eye, but he's here. Elara's stomach turned. So there's no pattern. The pattern is this. Varrock finds what you're good at and makes you prove it under the worst conditions possible. If you survive, you're in. If you don't, he made a cutting gesture across his throat. Helpful, Elara muttered. Corbin gave her a long look. You saved his brother. That counts for something. But it also makes him curious. And when Varrock gets curious, people get hurt. He walked away, leaving Elara standing there with a knot in her chest that wouldn't untangle. The second day, Kael found her. She was in the courtyard, hauling firewood to the kitchens, when he appeared beside her like a shadow with a pulse. She almost dropped the wood. Walk with me, he said. It wasn't a request. Elara set the wood down and followed him through the courtyard, past the training rings, out toward the eastern wall where the wind cut sharp and cold. They stopped at the edge, looking out over the mountains that stretched endlessly into the gray distance. Kael didn't look at her, just stared at the horizon like he was reading something written in the stone. You shouldn't have saved him, he said finally. Elara's jaw tightened. Your uncle? Or your... Both. Kael turned to face her. Up close, she could see the exhaustion carved into his face, lines around his eyes, shadows underneath. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. You put yourself in Varrock's sights. That's dangerous. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. Not for me. Elara met his eyes. I'm a healer. When someone's dying in front of me, I don't get to walk away. Even if it costs you everything? Yes. Kael studied her for a long moment. Then he exhaled, slow and controlled. You're stubborn. You paid 100 gold for me. You must have known that. The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Almost. I knew you were desperate. Desperate people fight harder. Is that why you bought me? Because you needed someone desperate enough to break your uncle's rules? Kael's expression went flat. I bought you because this pack is dying. And no one here wants to admit it. Elara blinked. What? We've been at war for 15 years, constant raids, constant fighting. We win because we're brutal, because we don't stop. But that kind of strength, it burns through people. We lose more warriors every year than we gain. Our healers are good at stitching wounds, but they don't know how to keep people alive long term. They don't know how to stop the rot before it starts. He looked at her. You do. You don't know that. I saw what you did to that boy. Torn told me about the others you've saved. You don't just patch people up, you actually heal them. That's rare. Elara shook her head. If that's what you wanted, why not just tell Varrock? Why let him set up this test? Because Varrock doesn't believe in healers. He believes in warriors. The only way you survive here is if you prove to him that healing is strength, not weakness. And the only way to do that is to pass his test. You could stop him. No, Kael said quietly. I can't. You're the alpha, and he's the one who taught me how to lead. Half the warriors in this fortress would follow him before they'd follow me. If I override him now, I split the pack. And a split pack is a dead pack. His voice dropped. So you're going to take the test. And you're going to pass. Because if you don't, Varrock wins. And I can't let that happen. Elara stared at him. This isn't about me at all, is it? This is about you and him. Kyle didn't answer. He just turned and walked away, leaving her standing there with the wind biting at her face and a cold certainty settling in her gut. She was a pawn, a piece on a board she didn't understand, being moved by players who didn't care if she survived. The third day, Varrock came to her room. It was late, past midnight. Elara had been lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, too wired to sleep. The door opened without a knock. Varrock stepped inside, closed it behind him. He looked the same as always, hard, controlled, unreadable. Tomorrow, he said. Dawn, the northern training yard. Elara sat up. What's the test? You'll find out when you get there. That's not fair. Varrock's eyes narrowed. Fair? You think life is fair? You think the people who killed your pack gave you a fair fight? Elara's hands clenched into fists. No. Then stop asking for fairness and start preparing for reality. He crossed his arms. Here's what you need to understand. I don't care that you saved my brother. I don't care that you're good at what you do. What I care about is whether you're strong enough to be part of this pack. Because if you're not, you're a liability. And liabilities get people killed. I'm not weak. Prove it. He turned to leave, stopped at the door. One more thing. If you fail tomorrow, you don't just leave. You're exiled. No supplies, no horse, no weapons. Just you and the frontier. Most people don't last a week out there. Elara's throat tightened. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know what's at stake. Varrock's face was stone. My brother thinks you're worth saving. Kyle thinks you're useful. But I think you're a soft-hearted idealist who doesn't understand that compassion is a luxury we can't afford. Tomorrow, you're going to prove one of us right. He left. Elara sat there in the dark, shaking, and wondered if she'd see another sunrise. Dawn came cold and brutal. Elara walked to the northern training yard with her heart in her throat. The yard was bigger than the others, ringed by high walls, empty except for a single wooden platform in the center. The entire fortress was there. Warriors lined the walls, standing shoulder to shoulder. Workers filled the gaps. Even the kitchen staff had come. Mira standing near the back with her arms crossed and her face carefully blank. Varrock stood on the platform. Kyle stood beside him, expression unreadable. Elara climbed the steps. Her legs felt like water. Varrock looked at her. You know why you're here. To prove I'm not weak. Wrong. You're here to prove you can make the hard choices, the ones that matter. He gestured, and two warriors dragged something onto the platform. Not something. Someone. A man. Young, maybe 25, bloodied, unconscious, breathing in shallow gasps. His leg was twisted at a wrong angle. His ribs looked caved in. He was dying. Elara's breath caught. What is this? Your test, Varrock said. This man is a prisoner, caught raiding our supply lines 2 days ago. He killed 3 of our people before we brought him down. Elara looked at the broken body in front of her. You want me to heal him? No, I want you to choose. Choose what? Varrock's voice went cold. He's dying. You can save him. Use your gift, your training, everything you've got. Prove you're as good as you say you are. But if you save him, he goes back to his people. And he'll come back. He'll kill more of us. Maybe someone you've healed. Maybe someone's child. Elara's stomach dropped. Or you let him die. Right here. Right now. Prove that you understand that some people aren't worth saving. The yard went silent. Elara stared at Varrock. You're asking me to choose between my oath and your law. I'm asking you to choose between mercy and survival, between what feels right and what keeps this pack alive. That's not fair, Beta. I already told you, fair doesn't exist. Varrock stepped closer. So what's it going to be, healer? Save the enemy and prove you're weak? Or let him die and prove you're strong? Elara looked down at the dying man. His face was pale, slick with sweat. He looked young, scared, human. Her hands were shaking. She thought about the Greythorn pack, about the raiders who'd come in the night, burning everything, killing everyone. She'd tried to save them, tried so hard, and it hadn't mattered. She thought about the boy in the courtyard, the baby who couldn't breathe, Varrock's brother. She thought about the oath she'd taken when she first learned to heal. Do no harm, save who you can, don't let them die alone. And she thought about what Kyle had said. This pack is dying. She looked up at Varrock. No, she said. Varrock's eyebrows rose. No? I won't choose. Elara's voice was steady now. You want me to prove I'm strong? Fine. But strength isn't about choosing who lives and who dies based on fear. It's about doing what's right even when it's hard. So you'll save him? No. I'll save him and make sure he never hurts anyone again. Varrock's eyes narrowed. Explain. Elara knelt beside the prisoner, placed her hands on his chest. I'll heal him enough to survive, then you lock him up. Use him for information. Trade him back to his people for terms. Or exile him so far out he'll never find his way back. But I won't kill him by doing nothing, and I won't set him free to kill again. There's a third option. You just don't want to see it. The yard was dead silent. Varrock stared at her. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Kyle spoke. She's right. Varrock turned on him. Stay out of this. No. Kale stepped forward. You set this up to break her, to prove she's weak. But all you've proven is that she thinks different than we do, and maybe that's what we need. What we need, Varrock said, his voice low and dangerous, is warriors who follow orders. What we need, Kyle shot back, is to stop bleeding out every year because we're too stubborn to change. She's offering a third way. Take it. Varrock's face went dark. You're undermining me, in front of the entire pack. You're the one who made this public. The two men stared at each other. The air between them crackled with something sharp and brittle. Then Varrock smiled, slow, cold. Fine, he said. Heal him. Save the enemy. Let's see how that works out. He turned and walked off the platform, shouldering through the crowd. The yard erupted in whispers. Elara looked at Kyle. He nodded once, then followed his uncle. Elara turned back to the prisoner and got to work. It took an hour. The man's injuries were severe. Broken ribs, punctured lung, shattered femur. Elara worked with Torin's help, stabilizing him, stitching what needed stitching, setting the bone as best she could. By the time she finished, the sun was high and brutal. Sweat dripped into her eyes. Her hands were cramping. But the man was breathing, stable. The warriors dragged him away to the cells. Elara stood, wiped her hands on her dress, and walked off the platform on legs that barely held her. The crowd parted. No one spoke. No one looked at her directly. She made it halfway across the yard before her knees buckled. Rhea caught her. Easy, you're done. It's over. Is it? Elara's voice came out hoarse. Rhea didn't answer. That night, Elara lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, too exhausted to move. There was a knock. She didn't have the energy to get up. Come in. The door opened. Kyle stepped inside. He looked as tired as she felt. He closed the door, leaned against it. You passed, he said. Elara laughed. It came out bitter. Did I? Because it doesn't feel like it. Varrock didn't exile you. That's passing. He hates me now. He hated you before. Now he just knows you're dangerous. Kale pushed off the door, walked to the window. What you did today, that was either the smartest thing I've ever seen or the stupidest. Which do you think? I don't know yet. Elara sat up slowly. He's going to come after me, isn't he? Varrock. Probably. And you can't stop him. I can try. Kyle turned to face her. But you need to understand something. This pack is balanced on a knife's edge. Half of them follow me because I'm strong. The other half follow Varrock because he's ruthless. If I push too hard, we fracture. And if we fracture, you lose everything. We lose everything. Kale's voice was quiet. So I need you to stay smart. Stay alive. Don't give him an excuse. I'll try. Don't try. Do it. He moved toward the door, stopped. For what it's worth, I think you made the right call today. Then why do I feel like I just made everything worse? Kyle looked at her for a long moment. Because you probably did. He left. Elara lay back down and closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. 3 days later, the prisoner woke up. Elara was in the cells with Torin, checking on him when his eyes opened. He stared at her, then at the bars, then back at her. Where am I? His voice was rough, broken. Iron Summit, Elara said. You're a prisoner. You healed me. Yes. Why? Elara didn't have a good answer. Because I could. The man laughed. It turned into a cough that sounded like it hurt. You're an idiot. Probably. He closed his eyes. They're going to kill me.
Maybe, maybe not. Depends on what you tell them. I'm not telling them anything. Then you'll die.
Elara stood. Your choice. She left him there. No. 2 days later, everything went to hell. Elara was in the kitchens when the alarm bells started ringing again, but this time they didn't stop. She ran to the courtyard. Warriors were scrambling, grabbing weapons, shouting orders that no one seemed to be following. Mira grabbed her. Get inside, now! What's happening? Raiders, a lot of them. They hit the eastern outpost an hour ago. They're coming here. Elara's blood went cold. How many? Too many. The gate slammed shut. Archers lined the walls. The courtyard cleared except for the warriors forming defensive lines. Elara ran to the main hall. Inside it was chaos. Wounded were already being brought in, scouts who'd been caught in the initial attack, bloody and broken. Torin was there, working fast. He saw her and pointed. Start with the worst ones. We don't have time for triage. Elara got to work. For the next 6 hours, she didn't stop. Wounded came in waves, warriors with arrows in their chests, fighters with slashed arms and broken legs, scouts with burns from fire arrows. She stitched, cleaned, stabilized, moved on to the next. Her hands were numb. Her back screamed. She kept going. And then the doors burst open, and they brought in Kyle. He was unconscious, pale. His armor was soaked with blood, and there was something wrong with his side, something dark and wet and spreading. Elara's heart stopped. What happened? She shouted. Garen was with him, holding pressure on the wound. Ambush. They had archers in the trees. He took 3 arrows. One of them, he pulled his hand away. The arrowhead was still inside, and around the wound the skin was turning black. Poison. Elara's breath caught. Get him on the table, now. They lifted him. Kyle's head lolled to the side. Elara put her hands on the wound and reached. The poison was fast, vicious, already spreading through his blood, wrapping around his heart like a fist. She had minutes, maybe less. I need yarrow root, white willow bark, and activated charcoal, she snapped. And get me Varrock. Varrock's leading the defense. I don't care. Get him. Torin ran. Elara cut away Kyle's armor, exposing the wound. The arrowhead was buried deep, lodged against a rib. If she pulled it out wrong, he'd bleed out in seconds. She grabbed a scalpel. Hold him down, she told Garen. He's unconscious. He won't be in a second. She cut. Kale's eyes snapped open. He screamed. Garen and 2 others held him down. Elara worked fast, widening the wound, getting her fingers around the arrowhead, pulling. It came free. Blood poured out. Elara packed the wound, her hands moving faster than her brain. The door slammed open. Varrock strode in, covered in blood and ash. What? He's poisoned, Elara said. Her voice was shaking. Same poison as before. Maybe worse. Varrock's face went white. Can you save him? Elara looked at Kyle. His breathing was shallow, erratic. His pulse was fading. I don't know, she said. Varrock grabbed her shoulder. Don't give me I don't know. Can you save him or not? Elara met his eyes. If I do, it's going to take everything I have, and I might not survive it. Varrock stared at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something other than stone in his face. Fear. Do it, he said.
Elara turned back to Kael, placed her hands on his chest, and poured everything she had into him, every ounce of strength, every bit of training, every desperate prayer she didn't believe in. The world narrowed to his heartbeat, to the poison burning through him, to the thin, fragile thread of life she was trying to hold on to. And then something inside her broke open, power flooded out, raw, wild, uncontrolled. It poured into Kael like a river breaking a dam, washing the poison away, knitting tissue, forcing his heart to beat. Elara felt herself fracturing, felt the edges of her consciousness starting to blur, but she didn't stop. Not until Kael's eyes opened. Not until he gasped and his hand grabbed hers. Not until Varrock said, "That's enough. Stop. You're killing yourself." Elara collapsed. The last thing she heard before the world went black was Kael's voice, rough and broken, saying her name. Elara collapsed. The last thing she heard before the world went black was Kael's voice, rough and broken, saying her name. When she woke up, everything hurt. Not the sharp, immediate pain of injury. This was deeper, bone deep, like something inside her had been wrung out and left to dry in the sun. She opened her eyes. The room was dim, lit by a single candle on the table beside the bed. Her bed. Someone had carried her back to her room. She tried to sit up. Her body screamed in protest. She made it halfway before her arms gave out and she collapsed back onto the mattress, gasping. The door opened. Torrin stepped in, carrying a bowl of something that smelled like herbs and burnt hope. He saw her awake and stopped. "You're an idiot," he said. Elara's throat was too dry to answer. She just looked at him. Torrin set the bowl down and sat in the chair beside the bed. "You almost died. Whatever you did to save Kael, it nearly killed you. Your heart stopped twice. Twice. I had to bring you back." "Kael?" Her voice came out like gravel. "Alive. Awake. Pissed off that you almost got yourself killed saving him." Torrin leaned forward. "What the hell did you do? I've never seen anything like that. You didn't just heal him. You pulled him back from the edge. No one does that. No one." Elara closed her eyes. She didn't know how to explain it, didn't fully understand it herself. All she knew was that when she'd felt Kael slipping away, something inside her had refused to let go. And she'd reached deeper than she ever had before, into a place she didn't know existed, and it had nearly destroyed her. "How long was I out?" she asked. 3 days. Elara's eyes snapped open. 3? Yeah. You missed the aftermath. The raiders pulled back after Kael went down. Varrock led the counterattack, drove them off. We lost 23 people, but we held the fortress. Torrin stood, picked up the bowl. "Drink this. It'll help." Elara took it. The liquid inside was bitter, thick. She drank it anyway. Torrin watched her. "Varrock wants to see you, when you're strong enough to walk." "Why?" "I don't know, but he's been asking about you every day." Torrin moved toward the door. "Get some rest. You're going to need it." He left. Elara stared at the ceiling and wondered what the hell she'd gotten herself into now. It took her 2 more days to get back on her feet. Her legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Her hands shook when she tried to hold things. But she could walk, barely. She made her way down to the main hall, leaning against the wall more than she wanted to admit. The hall was quieter than usual. The wounded had been moved to recovery rooms. The tables had been scrubbed clean, but you could still smell the blood underneath. That smell didn't wash out easy. Varrock was standing near the far end, arms crossed, talking to 2 warriors. He saw her and dismissed them with a wave. Elara walked over. Each step felt like it cost her something. Varrock looked her up and down. "You look like hell." "Thanks. Sit down before you fall down." Elara sat. The chair felt like a luxury. Varrock pulled up another chair and sat across from her. For a long moment, he didn't say anything, just studied her with those hard, unreadable eyes. "You saved my nephew," he said finally. "I saved a lot of people." "Not like that. Torrin told me what you did, said you almost died doing it." Varrock leaned forward. "Why?" "Because he was dying." "That's not an answer. You could have let him go, focused on someone you could save without killing yourself. Why risk it?" Elara met his eyes. "Because he's the alpha, and this pack needs him." Or what? "Or you care about him." Elara's jaw tightened. I barely know him. Oh, that's not a no. She didn't answer. Varrock sat back. I've spent 15 years building this pack, making it strong. Teaching people that survival means being harder than the world around you. No mercy, no weakness. And then you show up and save my brother with compassion. Save my nephew with whatever the hell that was. And now people are talking, saying maybe there's another way, a softer way. Is that a problem? I don't know yet. Varrock's voice dropped. But I'll tell you this, I was wrong about you. You're not weak. You're dangerous. Because you make people believe that kindness can keep them alive. And when they believe that, they let their guard down. And when they let their guard down, they die. Or, Elara said quietly, they live better lives before they die. Varrock stared at her. Then he stood. Kael wants to see you. He's in his chambers. Don't keep him waiting. He walked away. Elara sat there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. It felt like Varrock had just given her both a warning and a compliment, and she wasn't sure which scared her more. She stood and headed for the Alpha's chambers. Kael's rooms were in the central tower, 3 flights up. By the time Elara reached the door, she was breathing hard and her vision was swimming. She knocked. Come in. She pushed the door open. The room was larger than hers, bigger bed, actual furniture, a fireplace that was actually lit. Kael was standing by the window, looking out over the fortress. He was shirtless, and she could see the bandage wrapped around his ribs, where the arrow had gone in. He turned when she entered. For a moment, neither of them spoke. You look terrible, Kael said. Everyone keeps saying that. Because it's true. He crossed the room, gestured to a chair. Sit. Elara sat. Kael pulled up another chair, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his face, the shadows under his eyes. Torin says you almost died saving me, he said. I didn't almost die. Your heart stopped, twice. Elara looked away. I'm fine now. That's not the point. Kael's voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it. Why did you do it? Because you would have died. People die every day. Not on my watch. Not if I can stop it. Kael leaned forward. You can't save everyone? I can try. And what happens when trying kills you? What then? Elara met his eyes. Then at least I died doing something that mattered. Kael stared at her, and then slowly he shook his head. You're insane. Probably. He laughed. Just a short, sharp sound, but it was real. I don't know what to do with you. Join the club. Kael stood, walked back to the window. The pack's changing. You've noticed. Hard not to. Half of them think you're some kind of miracle worker. The other half think you're a threat. Varrock's in the second camp, but he's not calling for your exile anymore. That's progress. Doesn't feel like progress. It is, trust me. Kael turned to face her. But it also means you're in more danger now than you were before. People who see you as a threat won't wait for Varrock's permission to act. They'll come after you on their own. Elara's stomach tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying you need protection, and I'm assigning you a guard. I don't need... Yes, you do. Kael's voice was firm. Rhea will stay with you. She's good, trustworthy, and she'll keep you alive. I can take care of myself. Can you? Kael gestured at her. You can barely stand. You just burned through whatever reserves you had saving me. If someone came for you right now, you'd be dead before you hit the floor. Elara hated that he was right. Fine, she said, but only until I'm back on my feet. We'll see. Kael walked her to the door. Before she left, he caught her arm. Thank you, he said quietly, for saving me. Elara looked at him. At the man who'd bought her for 100 gold, who'd thrown her into a fortress full of people who hated her, who'd stood by and let Varrock test her to the breaking point, and who'd also defended her, protected her, trusted her when no one else would. You're welcome, she said. She left before things got more complicated. Rhea took her job seriously. For the next week, the lean, scarred warrior was Elara's shadow, followed her to the kitchens, to the healing ward, to her room at night, stood outside her door, watched everyone who came near. At first it was annoying, then it was comforting, and then, on the 8th day, it saved her life. Elara was walking through the lower halls,
heading back from checking on a patient when she heard footsteps behind her. Fast, deliberate. She turned. 3 warriors, all men, all armed. She didn't recognize them. "Can I help you?" she asked. The one in front smiled. It wasn't friendly. "You're the healer." "That's right." "The one who saved the prisoner, the raider." Elara's pulse kicked up. "What about it?" "He escaped 2 days ago, killed a guard on his way out. That blood's on your hands." Elara's breath caught. "I didn't—" "You healed him, made him strong enough to run. That makes you responsible." The warrior stepped forward. His hand went to his knife. Rhea appeared out of nowhere. She slammed into the warrior from the side, driving him into the wall. The other 2 went for their weapons. Rhea was faster. She drew her blade and put it against the first man's throat. "Back off," Rhea said. Her voice was calm, deadly. The other 2 hesitated. "She's under the Alpha's protection," Rhea continued. "You touch her. You answer to Kael. You want to do that?" The warriors looked at each other, then at the blade against their friend's throat. They stepped back. Rhea held the knife there for another 3 seconds, then let go. The warrior stumbled away, hand to his neck. "Get out of here," Rhea said. They left. Rhea turned to Elara. "You okay?" Elara nodded, even though her hands were shaking. "Thank you." "That's the job." Rhea sheathed her blade. "But we need to move. Word's going to spread fast." "Word about what?" "That the prisoner you saved killed someone and ran. People are going to blame you, and not all of them are going to wait for Kael's permission to do something about it." Elara's stomach turned. "This is bad." "Yeah, it is," Bossen. By the next morning, half the fortress knew. The guard who'd been killed was named Torin. 23 years old, married, his wife was pregnant, and Elara had healed the man who'd killed him. She stayed in her room, but she could hear the whispers in the halls, could feel the weight of the anger pressing against the walls. Kael came to see her that afternoon. "I need you to stay out of sight for a few days," he said. "Let this blow over." "It's not going to blow over." "It will if I say it will." "You can't control what people think." "No, but I can control what they do." Kael's face was hard. "The prisoner's death isn't your fault. He made his choice. But people are scared, angry. They need someone to blame, and right now, you're the easiest target." "So what do I do?" "You stay here. Let Rhea guard you, and you wait." "For what?" "For me to fix this." Kael left. Elara sat on the bed and tried not to think about Torin's wife, alone and pregnant, mourning a man who died because Elara had chosen mercy over vengeance. None. 2 days later, Varrock called another assembly. Elara stood at the back of the hall, Rhea beside her, and watched as the entire pack gathered. Varrock stood on the platform, arms crossed, face like stone. "You've all heard about Torin," he said. His voice carried across the hall, hard and clear. "You've heard that the prisoner we held escaped, that he killed a guard, that the healer we brought in is responsible." Murmurs ran through the crowd. "And you're right," Varrock continued. "She is responsible. She saved a man who should have died, and because of that, one of ours is dead." Elara's chest tightened. Rhea's hand went to her blade. Varrock looked directly at Elara. "Step forward." Elara's legs didn't want to move. She forced them to. She walked through the crowd, feeling every eye on her, and stopped at the base of the platform. Varrock looked down at her. "You made a choice, and it cost us. What do you have to say for yourself?" Elara's throat was dry. She looked at the faces around her, angry, grieving, hateful. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I was wrong." "You were wrong," Varrock agreed, "but you were also right." The crowd went silent. Varrock turned to address them. "The prisoner escaped because our security was weak, because we got complacent. That's not her fault. That's ours. And Torin died because he was alone on a shift that should have had 2 guards. Again, not her fault, ours." He paused, letting that sink in. "But here's what she did do. She gave us information. Before he escaped, the prisoner talked, told us where his people are camped, told us their numbers, their weapons, their plans, and because of that, we hit them 3 days ago, wiped them out,
All of them. Elara's breath caught. Varrock looked at her. You saved a man who became our enemy. But you also gave us the tools to destroy that enemy for good. So I'll ask the pack, was she wrong? Or was she playing a longer game than the rest of us? The hall was silent. Then someone in the back said, she didn't know he'd talk. No, Varrock said. But she knew that a living prisoner is worth more than a dead one. And she was right. He stepped down from the platform, walked over to Elara and looked her in the eye. You're not exiled, he said quietly. But you're not forgiven either. You're going to have to earn that. Understand? Elara nodded. Varrock turned back to the crowd. Anyone who has a problem with her takes it up with me. Or the Alpha. Otherwise we move on. He walked out. The hall emptied slowly. People looked at Elara as they passed, some with curiosity, some with lingering anger, some with something that might have been respect. Rhea nudged her. You just got the closest thing to an apology Varrock's ever given anyone. Doesn't feel like it. It wasn't supposed to. That night, Kael found her in the healing ward. She was restocking supplies, trying to keep her hands busy, when he walked in. Varrock told me what he said, Kael said. He defended me, sort of. He did more than that. He gave you legitimacy, told the pack that you're valuable. That takes guts, coming from him. Elara set down the bandages she'd been folding. Why did he do it? Because he's starting to see what I saw. That you're not just a healer, you're a strategist. You think different, and different is what we need right now. I didn't plan any of that. I just wanted to save a life. I know, but the result is the same. Kael leaned against the table. The pack's changing, Elara. Slowly. But it's happening, and you're at the center of it. I didn't ask for that. No one asks for it. It just happens. Elara looked at him, at the man who'd bought her, tested her, protected her, who'd almost died and came back harder. What happens now? She asked. Now we rebuild. We train, we get stronger. Kael's voice was quiet. And we make sure that the next time someone tries to break us, we're ready. He left. Elara went back to folding bandages, but her hands had stopped shaking. Over the next 2 weeks, things shifted. The warriors who'd confronted her in the hall didn't come back. People started nodding to her when she passed. A few even asked for her help directly. Small things at first. A twisted ankle, a fever that wouldn't break. She helped them all. And slowly, grudgingly, the fortress started to accept her. Torn began training her officially, teaching her the protocols, the hierarchy, the systems. She learned which healers to defer to, which ones to push back against, which ones were allies and which were just waiting for her to fail. She learned how to navigate the fortress, how to read the currents of power and politics that ran underneath everything. She learned how to survive. And then, 3 weeks after the assembly, Varrock's brother woke up. Elara was in the recovery ward when it happened. She'd been checking on him daily, monitoring his progress. The wound had healed clean. The poison was gone. But he'd been unconscious for weeks, and no one knew if he'd wake up. Until he did. His eyes opened. He looked around, confused, disoriented. Where? Elara moved to his side. You're safe. You're at Iron Summit. You were wounded in battle. He focused on her. You're the healer. Yes. Varrock told me. Before I... He coughed. He said you saved me. I did what I could. The man studied her. Then he held out his hand. Darius. Elara shook it. Elara. Oh, thank you, Darius said quietly, for not giving up on me. Elara didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. Word spread fast. By the end of the day, everyone knew that Varrock's brother had woken up, that he was going to make a full recovery, and that Elara was the reason why. That night, there was a knock on her door. She opened it. Varrock stood there, alone. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Varrock said, My brother wants to see you, tomorrow, when you have time. I'll be there. Varrock nodded, started to leave, stopped. You were right, he said quietly, about the prisoner, about giving him a chance. I didn't want to admit it, but you were right. He walked away before she could respond. Elara stood in the doorway, staring after him, and felt something shift in her chest. For the first time since she'd arrived at Iron Summit, she didn't feel like an outsider. She felt like she belonged. Bosin. The next morning she visited Darius. He was sitting up in bed looking stronger, color back in his face. He smiled when she walked in. "The miracle worker," he said. "Hardly. Varrock doesn't praise people, ever. He told me you saved my life twice, once on the table, once when you argued for keeping that prisoner alive. I didn't know it would. I know, but it did. And because of that, we destroyed the raiding party that's been hitting us for months. We're safer now than we've been in years." Darius leaned forward. "You changed things here, whether you meant to or not." Elara sat in the chair beside the bed. "I just wanted to help. That's what makes you dangerous. You help without thinking about the politics, without worrying about who you're supposed to save and who you're supposed to let die. You just help. And that scares people like Varrock, because it makes them question everything they've built. Is that a good thing?" "I think so, but I'm not in charge," Darius smiled. "Kyle is, and he trusts you. That's what matters." Well, that night, Elara stood at her window, looking out over the fortress. The courtyard was quiet, the training yards empty, the walls lit by torches that flickered in the wind. She'd been here for 2 months. 2 months of fighting, surviving, proving herself over and over. And finally, she'd earned something more than fear. She'd earned respect. The door opened behind her. She turned. Kale stood there, silhouetted in the doorway. "I heard Darius woke up," he said. "He did. He's going to be fine." "Good." Kyle stepped inside, closed the door. "I wanted to talk to you about what happens next." "What do you mean?" "You've proven yourself, more than once. The pack sees you differently now. They see you as someone worth protecting, worth listening to." He paused. "I want to make it official." "Official how?" "I want to name you Chief Healer, give you authority, a voice in the council, a seat at the table." Elara stared at him. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. Varrock will never—" Varrock already agreed, reluctantly, but he agreed. Elara's mind was racing. "Why?" "Because this pack needs you, and because I need you." Kyle's voice was quiet. "You've changed things here, Elara. Made us think differently. Made us stronger. And I don't want to lose that." Elara looked at him. At the man who'd bought her for reasons she still didn't fully understand, who tested her, protected her, trusted her. "Yes," she said. "I'll do it." Kyle smiled, a real smile. "Good." He left. Elara sat on the bed and let the weight of it all settle over her. She'd come here broken, worthless, a slave. And now she was something else entirely. Elara sat on the bed and let the weight of it all settle over her. She'd come here broken, worthless, a slave. And now she was something else entirely. She didn't sleep that night, just sat by the window, watching the stars wheel overhead, trying to understand how her life had changed so completely in such a short time. Chief Healer. A seat at the council table. Authority. It felt impossible, like a dream that would dissolve the moment she reached for it. But when morning came and the fortress bells rang, it was still real. The council met 3 days later. Elara had never been inside the war room before. It was in the central tower, 1 floor above Kael's chambers, a circular space with a massive stone table in the center and maps pinned to every wall. The maps showed territories, supply routes, enemy positions, the kind of information that kept a pack alive or got it killed. When Elara walked in, 6 pairs of eyes turned to look at her. Kael sat at the head of the table, Varrock to his right, Darius, still pale but upright, to his left. The others were commanders she recognized but had never spoken to: Garen, Rhea, and an older woman named Senna who led the scouts. There was an empty chair between Rhea and Senna. It had a cushion on it. New, clean, like someone had prepared it specifically for this moment. Kael gestured to it. "Sit." Elara sat. The chair felt too big. The room felt too small. She could feel every eye on her, measuring, judging, waiting to see if she'd crack under the pressure. "This is Elara Voss," Kael said to the table. "As of today, she's chief healer of Iron Summit. She has full authority over the healing core and a vote in council decisions. What she says carries weight. What she decides stands unless the council overrules her, which means she's your equal now. Treat her accordingly." Garen's jaw tightened. His scarred hands gripped the edge of the table. "With all respect, my lord, she's been here 2 months. That's not enough time to understand how this pack works, how we make decisions, how we—" "She saved my life." Kael cut him off, his voice flat and hard. "She saved Darius. She saved the Marek boy and a dozen others since. She gave us intelligence that wiped out the raiding party that's been bleeding us for 6 months. That's more than enough time. That's more than most of you have done in years." Garen's face went red. He opened his mouth, then closed it, looked down at the table. Varrock leaned forward, elbows on the wood. "The question isn't whether she's earned it. She has. Anyone with eyes can see that. The question is whether she can handle it. Being chief healer means more than stitching wounds and mixing tinctures. It means managing resources we don't have enough of, training staff who don't want to be trained, making life and death decisions on a scale she's never dealt with before." But he looked directly at Elara. "Can you do that?" Elara met his eyes, held them. "I don't know, but I'll figure it out." "That's not reassuring. It's honest." Varrock's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Fair enough." He sat back. "But understand this. You fail, people die. You make the wrong call, we lose warriors we can't replace. This isn't about being kind anymore. It's about being right." "I understand." "Good." Kael pulled a large map toward the center of the table. It showed the northern territories marked with red circles and black lines. "We've got bigger problems than staffing. The eastern clans are getting bold. 3 raids in the last month, all hitting our outer settlements. Small attacks, testing our defenses. They're seeing if we're weak after the assault 2 weeks ago." Senna, the scout leader, tapped one of the red circles. "They hit the mining outpost here, took supplies, killed 2 workers. Then here," she moved her finger, "burned a storage house. And here, they ambushed a patrol. 4 dead, 2 wounded." "Are we weak?" Darius asked. His voice was still rough from his recovery. Kael shook his head. "No, but they don't know that. They see that we took casualties, that we're down warriors. They think we're vulnerable." "Then we need to show them they're wrong," Garen said. "Hit them back. Hard. Make an example." "With what forces?" Rhea asked. "We're stretched thin as it is. Every raid we respond to pulls warriors from the fortress. We keep chasing them. We'll wear ourselves out." "So what do you suggest? We let them hit us and do nothing? I suggest we stop reacting and start thinking." Kael traced a line on the map with his finger. "We need to hit them first, before they get organized, before they realize we're not as weak as they think." He looked around the table. "I'm proposing a strike. 50 warriors. We go in fast, hit their main camp, take out their leadership." 50? Garen's eyebrows went up. "Their main camp has at least 100 fighters. That's suicide." "Not if we're smart about it. We don't fight them head on. We hit their supply lines first, burn their food stores, make them desperate. Then we offer terms." "What kind of terms? Surrender or starve?" The room went quiet. It was brutal. Effective. The kind of strategy that had kept Iron Summit alive for 15 years. And it would get a lot of people killed. Kael looked at Elara. "What do you think?" Every head turned toward her. She felt the weight of their attention like a physical thing pressing down on her shoulders. Elara looked at the map, at the red circles marking where people had died, at the black lines showing enemy territory, at the scale of the violence being planned. "I think burning their supplies is a mistake," she said slowly. Garen snorted. "Of course you do." Elara ignored him. "If you burn their stores, you create desperate people. And desperate people don't surrender. They fight harder. They raid more. They become more dangerous, not less." "So what would you do?" Varrock asked. His tone wasn't mocking, just curious. "Take the supplies. Don't burn them. Bring them back here. Then send them a message. We're strong enough to take everything you have. We chose not to.
But if you attack us again, next time we won't be so generous." Darius leaned back in his chair. "She wants us to steal their food and make them grateful for it." "Not grateful, just aware. Aware that we could destroy them, but we're giving them a choice. Keep attacking and lose everything, or back off and survive." Garen shook his head, disgusted. "That's the weakest thing I've ever heard. You're asking us to show mercy to people who've killed our own." "I'm asking you to be strategic. Mercy isn't weakness if it gets you what you want without losing warriors you can't replace." Kale was staring at the map, his expression unreadable. "It's risky. If they see it as weakness, they'll hit us harder." "But if they see it as strength," Elara said, "if they realize we're choosing restraint instead of being forced into it, they'll think twice. And thinking twice means they might not attack at all." The room fell silent. Varrock drummed his fingers on the table, a slow, rhythmic sound. "It's insane," he said finally, "but it's also the kind of insane that might actually work." He looked at Kael. "Your call." Kael stared at the map for a long moment. Then he nodded. "We take the supplies, leave a third behind so they don't starve. Let them know it's a message, not a mercy. See what happens." Garen looked like he wanted to flip the table. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." Kael's voice hardened. "We vote. All in favor of taking supplies instead of burning them." Elara raised her hand. So did Kael, Varrock, Darius, Rhea. Senna hesitated, then raised hers too. Garen kept his hands on the table. "This is going to get us killed." "Noted," Kael said. "Prepare the raid. We leave in 2 days." The council dispersed. Elara stayed in her seat, hands shaking in her lap, trying to process what had just happened. She'd just influenced a military decision, changed the course of a raid that could determine whether the pack survived or fell. Kael walked over. "You all right?" "I just convinced you to gamble with people's lives." "No. You convinced me to try something different. There's a difference." He sat on the edge of the table. "Garen's not wrong, you know. This could backfire. They could see it as weakness and hit us twice as hard." "I know. And if that happens, if warriors die because we showed restraint, that's on both of us." Elara looked up at him. "Why did you ask me? You could have just made the call yourself." "Because you see things the rest of us don't. You think like a healer, not a warrior. And right now, that's what we need." He stood. "Get some rest. You look like you're about to fall over." He left. Elara sat alone in the war room, surrounded by maps of violence and death, and wondered if she'd just saved lives or doomed them. The raid happened 4 days later. Elara wasn't part of it. She stayed at the fortress, managing the healing ward, preparing beds and supplies for casualties she hoped wouldn't come. Torrin worked beside her, restocking bandages, checking inventory. "You're nervous," he said. "Of course I'm nervous. If this goes wrong, people are going to die, and it'll be my fault. If it goes right, people live who would have died otherwise. That's also your fault." Elara tied off a bundle of cloth strips. "That's not comforting." "It's not supposed to be. It's just true." Torrin set down a jar of salve. "You made a call. A good one. Now you wait and see if you were right. And if I wasn't, then you learn and do better next time." He looked at her. "That's all any of us can do." The waiting was worse than anything. Elara couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, just paced the ward, checking and rechecking supplies, imagining all the ways the raid could go wrong. They came back at dawn on the 3rd day. Elara was in the courtyard when the gates opened. Wagons rolled in, loaded with sacks of grain, barrels of salted meat, crates of weapons. Warriors rode alongside, tired but uninjured, only 3 wounded. Minor injuries, cuts, bruises. Nothing life-threatening. Kael dismounted and walked straight to her. "It worked," he said. Elara felt her knees go weak. "What happened?" "We hit their camp at night. Took everything we could carry, left a third like you said. Posted a guard to make sure they knew we could have taken it all but didn't. One of their scouts followed us back. We let him, gave him a message to deliver. Attack us again, and next time we take everything, including your lives." "Did he take it?" "He took it. Whether they listen is another question, but so far," Kael gestured at the quiet courtyard, the lack of alarm bells. No counterattack, no raids, nothing. Elara sat down on a nearby bench before her legs gave out. I can't believe that actually worked. Kael sat beside her. You doubted yourself? Every second since the council meeting. Good. That means you understand the weight of what you did. He looked at the wagons being unloaded. You just changed the way this pack fights wars. You know that, right? I just didn't want more people dying for no reason. That's exactly what I mean. You think in terms of lives saved, not enemies killed. That's different. And different is what we need if we're going to survive the next 10 years. Over the next 2 weeks, the Eastern clans stayed quiet. No raids, no probing attacks, nothing. Word came back through traders and scouts that the clans were arguing among themselves. Some wanted revenge. Others were saying maybe Iron Summit wasn't the enemy they thought, that maybe there was a way to coexist without constant bloodshed. It was working, but not everyone was happy about it. Elara was in the healing ward late one night, alone, restocking the medicine cabinet when she heard voices in the hallway. Angry. Hushed. Trying to stay quiet, but failing. She moved to the door, pressed her ear against the wood, turning us soft, making us weak. Kael can't see it because he's blinded by whatever the hell she did to save his life. You saw the raid results. It worked. No casualties. Full supplies. This time. But what about next time? What happens when they realize we're too soft to finish a fight? When they come at us hard and we're not ready because we've forgotten how to be ruthless? Varrock supports her. Varrock's going soft too. That poison should have killed him. She brought him back and now he thinks he owes her. He's compromised. So what are you saying? I'm saying someone needs to do something before she destroys everything we've built, before we lose what makes us strong. Elara's blood ran cold. She recognized one of the voices now, Garen. She stepped into the hallway. 3 warriors stood there, backs to her. Garen and 2 others whose names she didn't know. They turned when they heard her footsteps. Garen's face hardened. How long have you been listening? Long enough. Elara crossed her arms, trying to look braver than she felt. You've got a problem with me. Say it to my face. Fine. You're making us weak. You're convincing Kael that compassion is strength, that mercy keeps us safe. But all you're doing is painting a target on our backs. Sooner or later, someone's going to realize we've gone soft, and they're going to hit us with everything they've got. And we won't be ready, because we'll have forgotten how to be what we need to be. And what's that? Brutal, unforgiving, strong. Elara took a step closer. We're still all of those things. We just added strategy to the mix. Intelligence, options. That doesn't make us weak. It makes us smarter. It makes us targets. Everything makes us targets. We're the strongest pack in the Northern Territories. People are always going to come after us. The question is whether we want to spend the rest of our lives fighting everyone, or whether we want to build something that lasts longer than the next battle. Garen's jaw clenched. You talk like someone who's never had to make the hard choices, who's never had to decide who lives and who dies based on cold reality. I've made those choices every day since I got here. Every person I heal is someone who might betray us later. Every enemy I save is someone who might come back to kill us. But I do it anyway because the alternative, becoming the kind of people who kill without thinking, who destroy without strategy, that's not strength. That's just cruelty. And cruelty burns out. It consumes itself. Sooner or later, you run out of enemies to kill and start turning on each other. One of the other warriors shifted uncomfortably. She's got a point. Garen rounded on him. Don't tell me you're buying this. I'm saying maybe she's right. Maybe there's more than one way to be strong. Garen stared at him, betrayed. Then he looked back at Elara. This isn't over. When your way fails, and it will fail, that blood's on you. Remember that. He walked away. The other 2 hesitated, then followed. Elara stood there, heart pounding, and realized she'd just made an enemy who wouldn't stop until one of them was gone. She told Kael about it the next morning. They were in his chambers, going over supply manifests. Kael listened without interrupting, his face carved from stone. When she finished, he set down the papers. Garen's dangerous, he said quietly. He's respected, been with the pack for 12 years, fought in every major battle. Warriors listened to him. What are you saying? I'm saying if he decides to move against you, it won't be alone, and I might not be able to stop it without splitting the pack. Elara's stomach tightened. So what do I do? You keep doing what you're doing. Prove that your way works. Save lives. Build alliances. Make yourself indispensable. He paused. And you watch your back. Because Garen's not the type to challenge you directly. He'll wait for an opening, a mistake. And when he finds it, he'll strike. That's not reassuring. It's not supposed to be. It's a warning. Kael looked at her. You changed the game when you saved my life. When you convinced the council to try something different. That makes you powerful. And power makes people nervous. Especially people like Garen who built their entire identity on the old way of doing things. Elara stood, walked to the window. Outside, the training yard was full of warriors drilling, moving through formations, preparing for the next fight. I didn't come here to change anything, she said. I just wanted to survive. I know, but you did change things, and now you have to live with the consequences. 3 weeks later, a messenger arrived. Elara was in the courtyard, overseeing the transfer of medical supplies, when a rider came through the gates at full gallop. He was one of the Eastern scouts. His face was pale, clothes soaked with sweat despite the cold. He nearly fell off his horse. Elara caught him. What happened? Raiders. He was gasping, barely able to get the words out. Eastern Ridge, hundreds of them. They're not from the clans, different banners, different tactics. They hit 3 settlements in 2 days, burned everything, killed everyone. Kael appeared, Varrock right behind him. How many? 300, maybe more, and they're headed this way. Kael's face went hard. How long do we have? 2 days. Maybe less if they don't stop to loot. Kael looked at Varrock. Get the council together. Now. The war room was chaos within minutes. Maps were spread across the table. Markers moved frantically as Senna traced the raiders' path. We can't hold against those numbers, Garen was saying, his voice tight. We've got maybe 90 combat-ready warriors. Against 300? That's a slaughter. We've held worse odds, Darius said, but he didn't sound convinced. Not like this. These aren't clan raiders looking for supplies. These are professionals, organized. They're here to wipe us out. Then we evacuate, someone suggested. Fall back to the southern stronghold, regroup. Varrock slammed his hand on the table. We don't run. This fortress is our power base, our home. We abandon it. We lose everything we've built. We stay and we die. Then we die fighting. The argument spiraled, voices rising, overlapping, desperate. Kael's voice cut through it like a blade. Enough. Silence. We're not evacuating, and we're not dying. We're going to do what we always do. We're going to fight smart. He looked at Senna. Can we bottleneck them? The eastern approach is narrow. If we collapse the bridge at Miller's Pass, they'd have to go around. Adds a day to their march. Do it. That gives us time to fortify. Kael looked at Rhea. Pull every reserve we have. Everyone who can hold a weapon. That's still not enough. I know. Kael's eyes found Elara. What do you think? The room went silent. Every eye turned to her. Elara's mind was racing. 300 raiders, 90 defenders. Those were terrible odds. Even with fortifications, even with smart tactics. Unless they changed the game. What if we don't fight them at all? She said slowly. Garen's face went red. Are you serious right now? They're coming to kill us and you want to, what? Talk to them? I want to give them a reason not to fight. They're not here because they hate us. They're here because someone's paying them, or because they need resources. Or both. If we can figure out what they want and offer them something better than a bloody siege, they might take it. That's insane, Garen said. You can't negotiate with people like that. Why not? We're not their enemy. We're just in their way. If we can make it easier for them to go around us than through us, they will. Varrock shook his head slowly. You're asking us to gamble with all our lives on the assumption that these raiders are rational, that they'll choose profit over slaughter. I'm gambling that people want to survive more than they want to kill, and if I'm wrong, we fight. But at least we tried. Darius leaned forward. What exactly are you proposing? We send a messenger, offer them terms,
Safe passage around our territory plus supplies in exchange for leaving us alone. Make it clear we're not surrendering. We're offering a deal. Take it or fight. Their choice." The room erupted. "That's surrender. They'll see it as weakness." "We can't reward aggression." Kale's voice cut through the noise again. "Everyone shut up." They shut up. He looked at Elara. "You really think this will work?" "I think desperate people don't want to die. If we give them a way to get what they need without losing half their fighters taking this fortress, they'll take it. And if they don't," she met his eyes, "then we were going to fight anyway. At least this way we tried." Kale looked at Varrock. "What do you think?" Varrock stared at the map for a long time. The room held its breath. "I think she's going to get us all killed," he said finally. "But I also think if we fight head-on against 300 raiders, we're dead anyway. At least her way, there's a chance." He looked at Elara. "But if this goes wrong, if they slaughter our messenger and march on this fortress anyway, you're the one who looks the families of the dead in the eye and explains why their loved ones died for nothing. Understand?" Elara's throat was tight. "I understand." Kael stood. "Then we send the messenger. Rhea, you're up." Rhea's eyebrows rose. "Me? You're fast, you're smart, and you're intimidating enough that they'll take you seriously. You'll carry our terms. Make it crystal clear. This isn't surrender. This is an offer. They can take it, or they can fight. But if they fight, we'll make it cost them." Rhea looked at Elara for a long moment. Then she nodded. "You better be right about this." "So do I." Rhea left to prepare. The council dispersed slowly. Garen shot Elara a look of pure hatred on his way out. Varrock lingered. "You've got guts, healer. I'll give you that. But guts don't stop arrows." "No, but strategy does." "Let's hope you're right." He walked to the door, paused. "For all our sakes." The next 2 days were the longest of Elara's life. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, just paced the healing ward, preparing for the worst, setting up triage stations, stockpiling bandages, herbs, everything she could think of. The fortress prepared for war. Warriors drilling from dawn to dusk, walls reinforced, defenses strengthened, everyone moving with the grim determination of people who knew they might be dead in 48 hours. Kael was everywhere, coordinating, planning, making sure that if it came to a fight, they'd be ready. Elara worked through the night, organizing supplies, training the healers on mass casualty protocols, trying not to think about what would happen if Rhea didn't come back, if the raiders rejected the offer and came for blood. On the second night, Varrock found her in the ward. She was alone, wrapping bandages, hands moving automatically while her mind spun in circles. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "No." He pulled up a stool, sat heavily. For a while, neither of them spoke, just sat in the quiet, listening to the distant sounds of the fortress settling for the night. "I've been fighting for 30 years, Varrock said finally. His voice was quieter than she'd ever heard it. "Built this pack from nothing, taught them to be hard, to survive no matter what, to never show weakness, never give an inch. And in all that time, I never once thought about whether there was another way to do it." He looked at her. "You've been here 3 months, and you've made me question everything I built, everything I believed. I don't know whether I should thank you or kill you." Elara managed a weak smile. "How about neither?" "Fair enough." Varrock stood slowly, joints cracking. "But I'll tell you this. If your plan works tomorrow, if those raiders turn around without a fight, I'll stand in front of the entire pack and admit I was wrong, that there's more to strength than brutality, that you were right and I was wrong. And if it doesn't work?" Varrock's face hardened. "Then we die fighting, like we always have. But at least we tried something different before the end." He walked to the door. "Get some sleep, healer. Tomorrow we find out if you're a genius or if we're all fools for listening to you." Rhea came back at dawn. Elara was in the courtyard when the gates opened. The entire fortress seemed to hold its breath. Rhea rode in alone. She looked exhausted, clothes torn, but she was alive and in one piece. Kael met her at the gates. "What happened?" Rhea dismounted, swayed slightly. Elara moved to steady her, but Rhea waved her off. "They took the deal," Rhea said. The courtyard went dead silent. Kael stared at her. "Say that again."
They took the deal. I delivered the message.
Their leader calls himself Vex. He laughed at first, said we must be desperate to offer terms. But then I showed him the supply manifest. Everything we were offering, food, weapons, safe passage through territory they'd have to fight for otherwise. Rhea took a breath. He called his lieutenants. They argued for an hour. Half wanted to attack anyway. Half wanted to take the deal. Vex finally decided the smart play was to take what we're offering and keep moving. Said there's easier targets to the south, and fighting us would cost him too many people. She looked at Elara. They're turning around. They'll be gone by nightfall. The courtyard exploded. Shouts, laughter, disbelief. Warriors grabbing each other, faces split with grins, workers crying with relief. Elara stood frozen, trying to process it. It had worked. She'd gambled with all their lives, bet everything on the idea that people would choose survival over slaughter, and it had actually worked. Kael crossed the courtyard. He didn't say anything, just looked at her. And she saw something in his face she'd never seen before. Complete, absolute trust. You just saved this entire fortress, he said quietly. You know that, right? Elara couldn't find words, just nodded. Kael turned to address the crowd. The raiders are leaving. We're safe. Because someone had the courage to try something different, to think like a healer instead of a warrior, to choose strategy over bloodshed. He looked at Elara. 3 cheers for the chief healer. The courtyard erupted again, voices shouting her name, fists pumping the air. Elara felt tears running down her face and didn't try to stop them. But that night the fortress celebrated like they'd won a war, which in a way they had. The main hall was packed. Food appeared from somewhere. Roasted meat, fresh bread, ale that flowed like water. People who'd been silent and grim for days were laughing, singing, celebrating being alive. Elara stood at the edge of it all, watching, trying to absorb the magnitude of what had happened. Varrock found her there. He looked older than usual, tired, but there was something different in his face, something softer. You were right, he said. No preamble, no hedging, just the simple admission. Elara looked at him. I was lucky. Maybe, but you were also smart and brave, and you saw a way forward that none of us could see because we were too locked into the old patterns. He held out his hand. I was wrong about you. Wrong about what strength means. Wrong about a lot of things. And I'm sorry. Elara shook his hand. His grip was firm, warm. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You just became the most valuable person in this fortress. That's going to make you a target for anyone who thinks the old way was better. Like Garen? Among others. Varrock's expression darkened. Watch yourself. Not everyone's as willing to change as I am. He walked away into the crowd. Kael appeared beside her a moment later. How does it feel? Terrifying, he laughed. Good. That means you understand what you've done. What have I done? You've proven that there's another way to be strong, that we don't have to choose between surviving and staying human. That compassion isn't weakness, it's strategy, it's intelligence, it's the thing that separates us from the people we fight. He looked out at the celebrating crowd. You changed everything today, Elara. This pack will never be the same. Elara felt the weight of those words settle over her. Changed everything. For better or worse, she'd altered the course of an entire community. What happens now? She asked. Now we rebuild. We formalize alliances with the eastern clans. We train. We get stronger. Kael's voice dropped. And we prepare. Because word's going to spread. About the pack that negotiates instead of slaughtering. That shows mercy. Some people will see that as weakness. Will come to test us. And we'll be ready. Yes, we will. He left her there, watching the celebration, feeling the strange mix of pride and terror that came with knowing she'd changed the world and had no idea what consequences would follow. But the consequences came sooner than anyone expected. 3 days later, Elara was in the healing ward when Torin burst through the door, his face white as bone. It's Varrock! He collapsed! We can't wake him! Alara's blood turned to ice. She ran. Varrock's chambers were in the northern wing. When she got there, a crowd had already gathered. Darius was there, his face stricken. Kael was trying to keep people back. Varrock was on his bed, face gray, breathing shallow and wrong. His skin was cold when Elara touched it. She put her hands on his chest and reached. Poison.
The same kind that had nearly killed Kael. But worse, concentrated, refined, like someone had distilled it into something lethal. Her eyes snapped open. This was deliberate. Someone poisoned him. The room went silent. Kael's face turned to stone. Who had access to his chambers? Anyone, Darius said, voice shaking. We don't guard personal rooms. We trust each other. Someone betrayed that trust. Kael looked at the guards. Find out who brought him food last, who had access. Question everyone. Now. They scattered. Elara was already working, cutting away Varrok's shirt, finding the entry point, a tiny puncture wound on his side, almost invisible. The poison had been injected directly into his bloodstream. This wasn't an accident or an opportunistic poisoning. This was assassination, planned, executed with precision. She worked fast, draining what poison she could, packing the wound with neutralizing herbs. But it was bad. Worse than anything she'd dealt with before. Kael stood over her. Can you save him? I don't know. It's spreading fast. If I can't stop it in the next hour, then don't stop. Do whatever it takes. Elara did. For 6 hours she fought the poison, poured everything she had into Varrok, drawing the toxin out bit by bit, keeping his heart beating when it wanted to stop, his lungs moving when they tried to quit. Her vision started to blur. Her hands shook. She felt herself beginning to fracture, the same way she had with Kael. Elara, Kael's hand on her shoulder. You need to stop. You're killing yourself. He's dying. So are you. I can save him. Not if you're dead. She ignored him, reached deeper, pulled harder. The poison was relentless, spreading through Varrok's blood like fire. She chased it, drew it out, forced it back, and felt something inside her crack wide open. Power flooded out, raw, uncontrolled. The room lit up with it, bright enough that people outside in the hallway could see the glow under the door. Varrok's back arched, his eyes flew open, and Elara collapsed. She woke up 2 days later in her own bed. Every part of her hurt. Deep cellular pain like she'd been wrung out and left to dry. Kael was sitting beside her bed. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. How long? She managed to croak. 2 days. Your heart stopped 3 times. Torin brought you back each time. Varrok? Alive. Recovering. Asking for you. Elara closed her eyes. Relief washed through her so strong it hurt. Did you find who did it? Kael's expression went dark. Garen. Elara's eyes snapped open. What? He confessed. Said Varrok had betrayed everything the pack stood for, that you'd corrupted him, made him weak, that the pack needed leadership that remembered what real strength looked like. Kael's voice was ice. He tried to kill my uncle because he couldn't handle change. Where is he now? Exiled, stripped of rank and weapons. We put him outside the gates yesterday morning with nothing but the clothes on his back. Kael leaned forward. He won't last a week out there. The frontier doesn't forgive weakness, and exile is the worst punishment we have short of execution. Elara felt sick. He did this because of me, because I changed things. He did this because he's a coward who couldn't adapt. Kael's voice was firm. Don't take responsibility for his choices. You didn't make him poison Varrok. He did that himself. But the guilt sat heavy in Elara's chest anyway. Varrok came to see her 3 days later. He looked terrible, gaunt, pale, moving like every step hurt. But he was alive. He sat in the chair beside her bed with a heavy exhale. You saved my life again, he said. I did what I could. You almost died doing it. 4th time now. 5th. But who's counting? Varrok smiled, just a tiny upturn of his mouth. I am, and I'm keeping a tally of what I owe you. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything. His voice went quiet. You saved my life, my brother's life, my nephew's life. You proved that I was wrong about damn near everything I built this pack on. That's a debt I can't repay. Then don't try. Just help me build something better. Varrok looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Deal. He stood slowly, wincing. Kael's calling another council meeting, tomorrow. He wants to talk about the future. About what kind of pack we want to be going forward.
I'll be there. I know you will. You're the only reason any of us are still here to have that conversation. He left. Elara lay back and stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of what she'd done, what she'd changed, what she'd built settling over her like a blanket.
The council met a week later. Varrock was there, still weak but upright. Darius looked healthier every day. Kael looked tired but determined. The seat where Garon used to sit was empty. No one mentioned it. Elara sat in her usual place, no longer questioning whether she belonged there. We need to talk about the future, Kael said without preamble. About what kind of pack we're going to be. For 15 years, we've survived through brutality, through being harder and meaner than everyone around us. It worked. We're still here, but it's not working anymore. He looked around the table. We're losing people faster than we can replace them. We're isolated, hated, always at war. Something has to change. Varrock leaned forward, elbows on the table. I spent those 15 years building that brutality, teaching people that strength meant never showing mercy, never backing down. And I was wrong. He looked at Elara. She proved it. Proved that there's another way. That strategy and compassion can be just as strong as violence. Stronger, maybe. Senna spoke up. So what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we try something new. We keep our strength, our discipline, our ability to fight when we have to, but we add something else. Intelligence, diplomacy, alliances. That's a risk, Darius said. Not everyone will agree. Some people will see it as betraying what we've built. Then we let them leave. But we don't let fear of change kill us slower than our enemies would. Varrock's voice was firm. I vote we formalize this shift, make it official pack law. Strength through strategy, power through alliances. Violence as a last resort, not a first response. Silence. Then Rhea raised her hand. I'm in. Senna nodded. Me too. Darius hesitated, then raised his hand. For the future. Everyone looked at Kael. He raised his hand. Unanimous then. We change. Starting now. Over the next 3 months, Iron Summit transformed. They reached out to the Eastern clans. Formalized treaties. Shared resources. Training. Intelligence. The healing ward expanded. Elara trained new healers, taught them not just techniques but philosophy. How to see healing as strategy. How every life saved was an investment in the future. The fortress became known for something new, not just strength, but fairness. Word spread through the territories. Other packs started reaching out, asking for terms, for trade, for alliance. Some came to test them, looking for weakness. They found strength, just a different kind. Slowly, grudgingly, the brutal, isolated pack became something else. A community, a force, a new kind of power. 6 months after Varrock's poisoning, Elara stood on the walls at sunset. The mountains stretched endlessly in every direction, painted gold and crimson by the dying light. Kael found her there. You look thoughtful, he said, just thinking about how different everything is. Better? Different, better, scary. She looked at him. Do you think it'll last? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. But it's better than what we had before. What did we have? Survival. Bare, desperate survival. He gestured at the fortress below, at the people moving through the courtyard, talking, laughing, living. This is more than survival. This is a life worth protecting. Elara felt warmth spread through her chest, something she hadn't felt since before the Greythorn pack fell. Hope. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For buying me, for trusting me, for giving me a chance to be more than what everyone else saw. Kael smiled, a real, genuine smile. You were always more than that. You just needed a place that could see it. He walked away, leaving her alone on the wall. Elara looked out at the mountains, at the endless frontier stretching into the distance, and thought about the girl who'd stood on an auction block 9 months ago. Starved, broken, worthless. That girl was gone. In her place stood someone who'd learned that true strength wasn't about being hard. It was about being wise enough to know when to fight and when to build. Brave enough to show mercy in a world that punished it.
and stubborn enough to keep believing that people could change, even when everything said they couldn't. She'd changed a fortress, changed a pack, changed the way an entire territory thought about power. And she'd done it by refusing to let the world make her into something cruel. The sun set, painting the world in fire. Elara smiled and went back inside to keep building the future she'd fought so hard to create.